Hello guys, welcome back to another vid. This is going to be a response to Andrew, the RPGMachine86. He's tagged me in a video titled Your 5 Most Nostalgic Games. So yeah, obviously a great topic to talk about. Not necessarily your favourite or the best games, but those nostalgic games, those games that really tug on your heartstrings, that you associate with a time in your life maybe, that just stand out from your formative years, that kind of thing. So here we go. So the first one I've got is Flashback, and obviously by Delphine Software, a French studio. It was kind of a follow-up to Another World, another cracking title. This is a very, very difficult game, highly reliant on precise timing of the platforming elements and that kind of thing. Very, very difficult game, but awesome fun. Did love it. But this game expanded on that style of game with the rotoscoped graphics, and it had a more kind of, well, Another World was quite a grown-up feel to it, but this also had a very grown-up feel. A brilliant cyberpunk futuristic adventure. I always loved that setting. Loved, Blade Runner and those types of films back in the day. But yeah, so I love the setting. The graphics were amazing back in the day. They absolutely blew you away. Those rotoscoped graphics that had that fluid animation, and it was just. It felt so different to everything else that I'd been playing, very childish games such as Sonic the Hedgehog, or simplistic arcade games, that kind of thing. This had a more grown-up feel to it, in the tone of it, in the construction, in the storyline. It involved, corrupt authorities and that kind of thing. Right up my alley, as an interesting storyline. So Flashback there. So just a few facts there. It was originally ported to at least 12 different systems. So it was a very, very popular game. It had a very wide spread. So at least 12 different ports, and that's obviously not including the more recent remastering of the game, which has been released on live services. That remastered version didn't get great reviews. People have tended to say they prefer to just go back and play the original. But it shows the popularity of the game that it did get that remake. So it was originally advertised as a CD-ROM game on a cartridge. As I said, the game features fully hand-drawn backdrops, and the animation is rotoscoped. As I was saying, it gives the movements an unusual fluidity similar to that of the earlier Prince of Persia games. The capture technique of Flashback was invented independently of Prince of Persia though, and used a more complicated method of first tracing video images onto transparencies. This is just some information I've picked up from the web about this game. The game was a commercial and critical success, and was listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the best-selling French developed game of all time at that time. And it also did get a sequel, of course, Fade to Black, in 1995, that came out on PS1, and I'm not sure if it made it to other platforms, but yeah, Fade to Black was kind of a sequel to Flashback there. I do have that game, and I've not yet played it yet, so that's something I'll get to eventually, definitely. So yeah, the style of this game was very unique. It had a very sparse use of music. It felt really grown up, as I was saying. It's sort of captivating story. And I love the missions that it sent you on, and the characters that you interacted with, the places that you went. The whole feel of it was just very unique. So that's Flashback. I need to upgrade my copy of this. It's a little bit worse for wear, but yeah, I might try and upgrade to a more minty version. But Flashback there. If you haven't seen this game, if you haven't played this game, and you're a fan of 16-bit gaming, then what are you waiting for? It's an absolute classic. But there's Flashback. Okay, the next one is Wipeout. It's the original on PlayStation 1 there. So, highly stylized game. Very unique when it came out. There weren't too many futuristic races. Of course, it took its inspiration from F-Zero, the granddaddy of all futuristic races. Although I'm sure people will point out earlier ones, but F-Zero really was the torchbearer. Standard bearer rather, for futuristic races. So yeah, inspired by that, very stylistic. It actually was the design for the game was actually by a company who was in New Republic. Yeah, who actually went to town on this game in terms of making it very cool. It was marketed at a club audience. The music on there was obviously, with the advent of CD-based consoles, you could now get CD quality audio, and this game took full advantage of that with a soundtrack by the Chemical Brothers, Orbital and Left Field. Two of those, Chemical Brothers and Left Field, certainly some of my favourite artists at the time. So, you know, playing this game with that soundtrack in the background just really did take it up a couple of notches. You know, that bombastic kind of house music soundtrack just really lent itself to the high-speed action. Yeah, it got good reviews when it first came out. There was some criticism of the control method. People were saying it was a bit floaty, but that was part of it made sense for the controls to be that way, because of course there's no wheels on these vehicles, they are floating. So it did take a little bit of getting used to, but once you did, there was an amazing feeling of connection between yourself and controlling of the ships, because it had that smooth feel to it, you know. And when you really got good and you managed to get round a whole track without bumping into the sides, it was just really an elating feeling. So jarring when you did hit the sides, but that made it all the more satisfying when you managed to get round the tracks without bumping into the sides. The control methods were a little more forgiving in the sequel, which I do have also, Wipeout 2097. Unfortunately it's a platinum version, but there you go, it's alright. The platinum versions aren't so much of a transgression on the PS1, unlike other consoles, classics editions. But yeah, Wipeout 2097, they improved the controls and the graphics and such, so this was technically a better game. But in terms of nostalgia, the first one obviously kicked it off. And yeah, just, you know, coming from a cartridge console background, obviously Mega Drive and Master System before that, and then Spectrum before that, I never had a PC or anything, so this is my first kind of real, one of my very early, shall we say, exposures to CD gaming was this game. It was a launch title, I believe, for the PlayStation. In Europe it came out a little bit later in America. So this was actually developed by Liverpudlian Studios. Was it Psygnosis? Yeah, Psygnosis. A Liverpudlian studio. So some British talent there. They impressed Sony so much that they later obviously gobbled up Psygnosis and turned them into an in-house development studio. But yeah, so Wipeout there. What else have I got to say here? Yeah, the graphics were really good at the time, really impressive, shifted along at a nice speed. But there was a little bit of an issue with the draw distance. That's something, of course, common with most games from that era, the first generation of 3D gaming consoles. Draw distances were terrible, in hindsight. But of course, hindsight is a beautiful thing, and back then it wasn't much of an issue. Didn't really notice the fact that you couldn't see more than 50 yards in front of you down the track. Yeah, it got a port to the Dreamcast, of course, not Dreamcast, the Saturn. The Saturn struggled to replicate the game. Most notably, the Saturn struggled with transparencies. So the transparencies were kind of, they had to compromise and use kind of a grid pixel effect. But yeah, so graphically the Saturn version struggled, but it was still a very fun game. But the original and best, of course, on the PlayStation 1. Now, criminally for a racing game, there was no single screen, split screen mode on this game. You could not play two player on the same TV on this game. Absolutely criminal for a racer. But you could do system link. So, there's some consolation there. If you had two PlayStations, 2 copies of the game, I believe you needed 2 copies of the game, and a system link cable, you could play this 2-player with a screen each. Yeah, so I think that is correct and accurate. Anybody, please put me right if any information that I am spewing forth here is incorrect, but that's what I believe to be the truth. So yeah, what else can I say about it? Oh, just fantastic. The physics of it, the graphics, the sound, the style. Oh, it was just oozed cool at a time when you know, the PlayStation really was going for that cool dollar, as were other consoles as well. But yeah, so Wipeout. This actually had a little bit of controversy as well in one of the ad campaigns featuring a young Sarah Cox, radio DJ. And in the picture, she had this kind of nosebleed. She sat on a sofa holding a controller, and she has a nosebleed, presumably to indicate the speed that she's experiencing whilst playing the game. But people complained, saying it looked like she'd had a drug overdose, and because this game was aimed at the club market, in fact, it had a bit of a cameo on a film called Hackers. Is it Hackers? Yeah, where this game was being played in a club. Yeah, I think I might have actually played this game in a club as well. Not at the time it came out, I think I was too young then, but a little bit later. Anyway, Wipeout, fantastic game. Right, what else have we got? So, the next one is, it'll be no surprise if you've been subscribed to my channel for a little while, and because I previously made a video about the single most nostalgic game that of my gaming career, and it is this one. Sword of Vermillion. Now this was actually Yu Suzuki's first ever console exclusive, so of course after having masterminded so many arcade classics, this was his first console exclusive, and what a departure it was for Yu Suzuki from his you know, the usual type of pick up and play arcade style games that he'd been making. This is an epic, huge adventure. The first adventure game I ever played, the first RPG game that I ever played, and it really set me down the path of loving that genre ever since. Completely immersive. It was a complete departure for me as well from the type of games I've been playing, to something as engrossing and involving and deep and long as this. Absolutely huge game. It's so big, in fact, for the time, they felt that they needed to include a tip book with this. Now it's Genesis branded. I don't believe there ever was a PAL branded, a Mega Drive branded booklet. But yeah, this booklet is really big and really comprehensively takes you through the different locations, enemies, and dungeons within the game. You can see the rundown of things to do, places to go, people to see, that kind of thing. And I certainly did use this a lot whilst playing. But yeah, so what else can be said about this game? It was quite varied for what it was. An RPG. It had 4 different sort of game modes. You had the town view, uses the typical overhead angle found in most RPGs. Then you had the battle view, which was actually an overhead view where the player takes full control of the character in real-time combat. And you can use your weapons and magic as well, obviously upgradable. But yeah, so your real-time combat, sort of hack and slash action when it came to the battles, which was unique for RPGs. Of course, the turn-based battling was very popular back in the day. This was something unique. I really enjoyed that mixture of the traditional kind of exploring and what word? Mine's gone blank. Real-time action, yeah. And then you have the dungeon view, which is like a first-person perspective. You kind of you may be aware of you know, the old dungeon style dungeon crawlers like that. And then you had the boss view, where you came to a boss, then it would come to a fourth different type of view, and that's side-on, fighting these massive sprites. And there's one of the bosses there. Town view, and the sort of dungeon exploring view. There's out in the field and in the town. So anyway, yeah, Sword of Vermillion, that is my most nostalgic game ever, so I had to include it in this video. Right, next one, Night Trap. Oh my god, nostalgigasm. Now this is a perfect example of why, you know, your top 5 nostalgia games isn't necessarily going to be your top 5 like favourite or best games. As a game in itself, I'm not sure if I get much out of it if I went back to it today, but you know, as a kid back in the day, this one just drew me in. It was, if you don't know anything about it, it's it's kind of a full motion video game where you go into a house to protect a family from these invaders, and there's cameras placed in each room in the house, and you have control of the CCTV, and you can flick from room to room to follow the action, to find out important bits of information. You need to spy on conversations. You also set off traps to trap these guys here, and it's just so cheesy, so kitsch, you know, sort of B-movie feel to it. But yeah, it felt really futuristic at the time. Of course, I got the Mega CD. I got that quite close to launch, actually, coming to a bit of money at the time, so quite spontaneously decided to go and get that Mega CD. And yeah, for the first several months I had a hell of a lot of fun with that system. Of course, it didn't last very long, but this game kept me entertained for quite a long time, and I went through it quite methodically, to the point where I actually made a list of where you need to be in each room each time to get the piece of information you need, code words for the security system, and to where to trap these guys and that kind of thing. So I made a comprehensive list just by trial and error. No internet back then. There was no internet to cheat and find out, you know, stuff like that, guides, walkthroughs. There was none of that. So meticulously and by trial and error, wrote down the times and the rooms of each place that I needed to be, and that's basically the route to beating this game, is to knowing where and when you need to be in each room. Otherwise, you know, if you don't catch enough baddies, you fail, and that kind of thing. So, but yeah, you can see there 15 rating on it. Actually had a lot of controversy, this game. It was actually it was actually part of a congressional hearing to discuss violence and general wrongness in video games, and this game actually contributed to the eventual establishment of the ESRB rating, which is now on all US NTSC boxes. I'll show you on here. So this little thing here that's on all the game boxes now in North America, that happened as a result of congressional hearings that involved conversations about this game and some others. Yeah, and it was a lot of controversy for being you know, adult content and violent and sexual content. There's none of that. It really is no objectionable content in this. It's a very milquetoast experience in terms of you know, controversiality. It really doesn't warrant the 15 rating, I don't think. I think they were kind of taken aback by the realism of it, in the fact of actually using video footage as opposed to cartoon graphics. Maybe that was part of it. But yeah, certainly a massive overreaction to this game, with the controversy of it. But yeah, Vampire Mike of SegaCDUniverse shares my love for these full motion video games. He certainly enjoys a few more than I do, but Night Trap specifically, and its spiritual successor Double Switch, were both just absolute shining lights in my gaming you know, life back as a kid. Just so different, so immersive in a very unique way. Yeah, and the nostalgia seeps from every pore of this game for me. I only need to see the Digital Pictures logo turning around to get those shivers, and every time one of Mike's videos starts with the Night Trap opening music, I do enjoy that. But yeah, so Night Trap, certainly one of my most nostalgic games. This actually was originally intended for release on an unreleased console called the Nemo, and that was actually going to be a VHS-based console, if you can imagine that. And obviously, it was going to focus quite heavily on full-motion video games, but the Nemo never made it. So this game that was made for that console, and some others as well, Sewer Shark, I believe, and some others, were then ported over to Mega CD and later other consoles as well. So yeah, originally intended to be a VHS video game, came out eventually on a Mega CD, and I absolutely loved this game. Like I said, I'm not sure if I'd go back to it and enjoy it as much as I did back in the day, because to get the most out of it, you really did need to do that methodical, repetitive, you know, a recording of your itinerary of where you need to be and where you need to go. And I don't think I'd put those hours into it again. But yeah, nostalgia right up there. So the last one it's got to be, no surprise, it is Shenmue. Well, I put 1 and 2 here, of course. They're basically experienced as a package. Yeah, a little bit later on than some of the other games on this list, but certainly still very nostalgic for me. It reminds me of a time at university, and instead of you know, doing silly things like going to lectures, I would sit and play this for days. And just the immersion of this game was unbelievable. Again, very unique feel, a very mature feel to the game in terms of the pacing and the dialogue, and there's a lot of philosophy that runs through these games. So yeah, it really can drag you in on a psychological level, so to speak. But yeah, as you well know, Shenmue 3 going to be coming out soon. This game was set to run and run. Obviously the Dreamcast's failure meant that we didn't see the third one, or the fourth, or the fifth. There was apparently supposed to be ideally 5 Shenmue games to complete the story. We are going to see the third one, and hopefully if that sells well enough we'll then get the fourth and the fifth, but we'll save that discussion for another day. But I spoke a lot about Shenmue on this channel, so I'm not going to go on too much about it again in this video. But if you want to see any videos that I've done on Shenmue, there's a playlist and I'll link that below. So guys, that is my top 5 most nostalgic games, and thanks for tagging me, Andrew. Don't think I'm going to tag anyone. I may do. I'll decide after filming this, and if I do, they'll be in the little bar, so go and have a look and see if you're there. Alright guys, bye bye.